There's been a couple of news nuggets, I guess you would say. Not really news, but on Friday we didn't record a podcast because I would have been out on Saturday. But on Friday, Juju Smith-Schuster elected to go back to the Steelers instead of coming to the Chiefs for more money. A lot of people were like, "What is Juju doing?" So, Mark, were you kind of in that camp, just thinking money talks, but apparently it doesn't talk to Juju that much?
Yeah, that was a weird one because I had heard the Chiefs might be in on him,
Mhm.
and that would be a great fit to fill in where Sammy had been playing the last few years. And to hear that he wanted to go back to the Steelers for less money seems a little bit odd. I guess the only thing that I would say is if he wanted to come to Kansas City, he'd be the third receiving option, probably behind Kelsey and Hill. And if he was just coming here on a 1 year deal, having to learn the new offense, be the third option. So I guess that could play into it a little bit.
Mhm.
If he's not strictly just coming to like play with Mahomes and try to get a ring. And like the Steelers had a decent season last year, but we saw how it ended. It fell off a
Mhm.
cliff for him. So maybe he thinks they can jump back in and win the division and go for a Super Bowl there. But yeah, I don't know. He likes Pittsburgh and they like him. The fans like him at least.
Yeah.
They like his TikToks, so he's ready to roll.
We were deprived of the TikTok collabs of Jackson Mahomes and Juju Smith-Schuster, sadly. Would have really loved to see that. How awesome would those have been? Just to get that in Kansas City would have been an electric factory. Millions. TikTok downloads would have skyrocketed in the city of Kansas City if Juju Smith-Schuster would have signed with the Chiefs. And I think you're right on it, Mark. I think that he does sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers because he can get a bulk amount of targets there. This market for free agents has been really slow in terms of wide receivers. And when you look at it, Juju Smith-Schuster was not going to cash out this season. The cap is going to boom again. The cap fell this last season. It's going to boom in 2022. 2023 is the expected year. It's going to be very high. So Juju Smith-Schuster goes there for a year, gets targets, gets numbers up, which I don't know if he really could have in Kansas City. I've heard another counter argument to Juju gets more targets in Pittsburgh too. In Kansas City, he would have really been like the number two option because you double team Kelsey, you double team Hill. Then who do you go to? You go to Juju. I don't think that that's fair to say
Yeah.
because Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey still get their targets, still get their touches, no matter how much defense is on them. We see that all the time, and that's the big
Oh
thing with
yeah.
Juju for me is that I think he's trying to make a decision to better himself in the future, and going back to Pittsburgh probably makes the most sense for that. I don't knock the dude's hustle. He's trying to get more money for the long term. He's playing the long game. He's not going short term money right here. The Ravens
Hmm.
offered him even more money than the Chiefs did. I think it was base of 9 and 4 million in incentives, something like that.
Yeah.
And then the Chiefs were base of 8 and 4 million in incentives. So he's getting seven, or he's getting eight there with like seven guaranteed.
Hmm.
So he's getting all of 1 year deals. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about some wide receivers here. The wide receiver contract market is interesting. I think it's one of those that a lot of these guys are going to sign 1 year deals to try to better their market for the next season when the cap does boom. Things are starting to get back to normal. You're starting to see COVID restrictions loosen up, which is good for not only the country but for the NFL. I
Hmm.
think that we're starting to get back into the rhythm of things of the NFL. And the Chiefs did make a couple other signings too with Joe Tooney, Kyle Long. Haven't talked to you since last Monday. I wanted to get your reactions on those signings, Mark.
Yeah, I didn't really have Tooney on my radar, honestly. I thought
Yeah.
he was going to go back to the Patriots. So that was kind of when we had gone through some free agents before and like who we thought would be a nice fit on the offensive line. I didn't even really have him like on my list because I didn't think he'd be available. So
Right.
it was a surprise for me, but a good surprise because when you can get another a nice left guard in here to protect Mahomes, like I know you've talked about on the podcast this past week, having Mahomes be able to step up in the pocket and maybe
Right.
not have to scramble around as much. Which I mean, he can still do that if he needs to, but you don't want him to do it on every play. So
Mhm.
as long as we got Tooney in there, I think I saw a stat that said he'd only allowed what 3 sacks in the last 2 seasons or something
Right.
crazy like
Yeah.
that. And he hasn't missed a start since he's come into the NFL. So that the availability is incredible there. So let's just hope and pray that he stays healthy after he signed that deal with the Chiefs. And then, of course, Kyle Long. I don't really know exactly what to expect from Long. I've been talking to my Bears friends who like the Bears, and they really liked Kyle Long when he was there. They did say he would get hurt a little bit too much for their liking. But the good news is he's had a year off, and it could be a situation kind of like Gronk, where Gronk had a year off and he came back, and it took him a little bit to get into it, but then by the
Mhm.
end of the season, he was looking pretty good. So if you can have Kyle Long come in here and maybe not start right away, but can come in and be a backup at first, and if somebody needs a break or if somebody gets hurt, he can step in there. He's a starting level guard, so he can also
Yeah.
play right tackle, which you don't really want him to play that spot as a starter, but like you need depth. There he is. He can play right tackle for you.
I totally agree with you. I had a conversation with Carrington Harrison for his YouTube channel. I had a conversation with him about these signings. I like the Kyle Long signing in terms of depth, right? I don't think as a starting right guard, I don't really know if he gives me the assurance that he'll be there all the time.
Mhm.
If he doesn't start there, then ends the season there, I would be totally okay with that. His contract isn't starting guard money, so
Yeah.
that's fine. He's a good guard. I mean, he's a solid player, but as you mentioned, the dude's been hurt since 2016. Essentially, there hasn't been he's been landed on the injured reserve multiple times
Mhm.
since then, and so it's just kind of disappointing to see how his career went. The last time he got a hip injury, the Bears didn't pick up his option on his contract, and he just went into retirement. And I think a retirement was probably good for him to kind of heal up. And it's funny they went the opposite way with Joe Tooney, right? So Joe Tooney is a guy who's really reliable, doesn't usually, knock on wood, doesn't
Yeah.
usually get hurt, and is a guy who has been there, played 500 more snaps than any left tackle in the NFL since he came to the league in 2016. And
Hmm.
then they went and got Kyle Long, who is good talent wise. I don't get me wrong, I like Kyle Long. I've always liked the Long family. I think the Long family is full of good football players from
Oh yeah.
Howie Senior to Chris and Kyle. So they've
Hmm.
got some great football players in that family, and I think he's a good football player. He can be a good depth piece. Really love the culture. I think he had some phenomenal quotes. I wrote a story about Kyle Long kind of coming to Kansas City. He just said that he landed in Vegas and it didn't feel right. Even meeting with the team, he said, which don't you love that to hear as a
Yeah.
Chiefs fan, that he landed in Vegas and didn't feel like home. And once he got in Kansas City and meeting with Andy Reid, he said, "This I knew this is where I wanted to be." And as soon as the Chiefs were interested, he said he was going to do whatever he could to get into the red and gold. So you love to hear that as a Chiefs fan. He said all the right things in his introductory press conference. The Chiefs are kind of overhauling this offensive line, and now they're stuck with looking, what are they going to do at center? They still have a hole at left tackle. They still have probably a wide receiver hole. And, the Chiefs they're in on guys. And to your point earlier, Mark, it's not that Brett Veach isn't trying. He's just not getting the guys to sign. And I know Dove Kleiman, we don't like to interact with him. I don't like to mention him. It seems like he just does everything for clicks and to make people upset, especially with Chiefs fans. He
Yeah.
said something on Twitter like, has Kansas City lost their luster, talking about Trent Williams and Juju Smith-Schuster? I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Trent Williams, I think, used Kansas City as a bargaining chip to get more money from the San Francisco 49ers, and it
Mhm.
worked. The dude
Oh
got an
yeah.
absolute Brinks truck backed up to his house, and he's going to be getting record money. It is going to be record money because he's going to be the highest paid offensive lineman.